The Bengals are 10-4, but injuries are starting to pile up a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. Sam Hubbard added to the list. We'll get into his injury and other notes on the defense, in addition to some other thoughts as the Bengals beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in today's episode.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We're part of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you coverage of your team every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button, join the First Listen Club. And if you're new to the show, make sure you stick around because we have you covered every day of the week with film takeaways, with game previews. We're going to have a crossover coming up this week to prepare for the New England Patriots game with the host of Locked On Patriots. So we've got it all here on Locked On Bengals. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on an app store on your Google device or iPhone. Our listeners will get a 100% free boost to their franchise using promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game store. James, we're going to start today with Sam Hubbard joining Trey Hendrickson, joining Cam Taylor-Britt, joining Mike Hilton, joining Chidobe Awuzie as players injured on the Cincinnati Bengals defense right now. And the picture could be rosy for some of those defensive backs as they're at least optimistic they'll play later this week. We'll see. But Sam Hubbard now expected to miss at least some time. The timeline indeterminate with a calf injury that was aggravated on Sunday against Tampa Bay. And you hope Trey Hendrickson can get back soon is my first reaction to this. You hope that that wrist isn't too bad, that it's healing as they hoped it would, that it might be only a 2-week absence for him, or that he can find a way to play with a club if he needs to. Not that I want him to rush back by any means, but losing both of your starting defensive ends, and those guys are both really important to this defense, far from ideal overall, but coming up with a game against the Patriots, who you talk about the Bucs offense struggling, the Patriots might have the worst offense in the NFL right now, and that could be a debate. Could be a worse time for this to happen, I guess, given the immediate upcoming opponent, but certainly not good news on Sam Hubbard's calf.
No, it sucks. It sucks because he was having a career year. Let's take all the team stuff out of it. Sam Hubbard was having the best year of his career, led the Bengals in sacks going into this week's game, still does, but led them going into the game against Tampa. And they really needed him with Hendrickson out. Mm-hmm. And now he's out. And so, look, Lou Anarumo is the man. But at some point, it's too much to find a way to get pressure. And they didn't get nearly the pressure they've averaged against the Buccaneers. And you're right, the Patriots, okay, well, let's just forget about the Patriots for a second. And I'm not downplaying this matchup because I think it's going to be a really tough game on Saturday, but forget about them for a second. What are we talking about now in Cincinnati? What are we talking about on Locked On Bengals? We're talking about a 1 seed, right? We're talking about first round bye, much different AFC North titles. And to do that, you're going to have to win out. To accomplish all of those goals. And not having Hubbard, that's a huge loss. Not having Trey Hendrickson makes it that much tougher. We don't know about Trey. I would be surprised if he plays on Saturday. All along, I've said, man, you get that extra couple of days going from a Saturday night to a Monday night against the Buffalo Bills in Week 17. So maybe that's the play. That's the plan, is to maybe get him back for that. But as far as Hubbard, I'd be pretty surprised. And maybe it happens. Maybe he comes back for Baltimore. I'd be pretty surprised if we see him at all for the rest of the regular season. I think this is just knowing this coaching staff, knowing how they're going to go about it, maybe you see him against the Ravens, but I think that we're going to see him in either round 1, the wild card round, or the divisional round, depending on how things wind up over the next 3 weeks. That'll be the next time we see Sam Hubbard. My prediction, not saying I'm reporting that. That's the unfortunate circumstance, in my opinion, about the situation.
And it looked like he knew right away, right? Like he signals to the sideline as soon as that play ends, tries to jog off the field a little bit, ends up limping off the field a little bit. I think he knew that whatever was going on with that calf in the middle of the week that he tried to play through, he showed up on the injury report last week. Whatever it was, not a great result. And
well, it got worse, right?
You can just hope for the best.
Yeah. And so
go ahead.
let me ask you, and you could talk more during our film review with Sands about this. How the heck are they going to get pressure?
Well, that was something that stood out to me when you said that is they actually, I feel, got more pressure after Hubbard left the game. And this isn't because of Sam Hubbard. It's because they got a little bit creative with it, right? The Trey Flowers interception, for example. And I don't remember if this is after Sam Hubbard left the game or not, because I haven't rewatched the game yet. I'm going to right after
Sam Hubbard got injured in the second quarter.
Okay.
So, yes.
So, yes.
So all of the good stuff on defense, and again, this doesn't have to do, but all of the good stuff on defense happened after he exited. There's not a correlation there, just to be clear. But second half,
the way it happened.
Well, sweet Lou found a way to get things done and make those adjustments. So keep going.
Yeah, so they end up changing the picture more on Brady in the second half, I think, and doing it in a way that breaks some tendencies. They figured out what the Bucs wanted to do in this game, and there was some drop 8 stuff that's what produced the interception for Trey Flowers. There were more twists. That's what with Logan Wilson coming around the edge on like a linebacker twist. And it wasn't a true blitz. I think they dropped the guy out on the other side. So it was still a 4-man pressure, but Logan Wilson comes from like middle linebacker, ends up looping all the way around outside the tackle, pushes Brady up into the pocket. He gets the sack, and then DJ Reader coming up the middle also gets in there to knock the ball out. DJ Reader also had a really good game as a pass rusher. I thought that turned up in the second half, really collapsing the interior of the pocket, which, as we discussed, is something that Brady doesn't like to deal with. So, those are some things that stood out. And we'll get into it more, like you said, when we break it down more with Sands tomorrow. But I was pretty impressed with the defense in the second half. We'll get into the second half defense splits and stuff because I just went and looked it up today because I was curious. But this team consistently, just from an eye test perspective, has gone into the locker room in some games where you're not necessarily feeling great at halftime. This is the most recent example where you're thinking, man, they really need to stop. They haven't really been able to get a stop so far, but they really need to stop right now. And then they come out and suddenly it's like a 3-and-out, or they get a turnover. And then things start going much better for them in the second half. And we saw that in this game as well, the adaptation in the second half. And what was really impressive about it to me is what I said leading into this game, which was Brady's seen it all, man. How are you going to fool a guy that's been playing quarterback in the NFL for 25 years or however long he's been in the NFL at this point at the highest level?
Yeah.
And he actually did it. Like the interception is Brady getting fooled, which is incredible.
Talking about the Flowers
interception.
Yeah,
sorry.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. He thought I've seen Brady make that throw a ton, and it very rarely is that the result.
And early in the game, Brady's awareness of who's in coverage in space, because he's thrown into tight windows with confidence. Like he's throwing seeds into tight windows in the Bengals zone in the first half when it looked like vintage Brady, right? And that was Brady being aware, like, oh, that's the defensive end that dropped into that zone. He's not going to be able to break on this ball. I know that I have this throw. The other guy's too far away. And here he's expecting a zero look because they're showing, and we'll talk about it tomorrow with Mike. I'm sure he's tweeted about it, so you can go just look at his timeline. But the Bengals are showing that birds on a picket fence in the secondary. They're flat from corner, safety, corner, which is a pretty good indicator that you have a zero blitz coming, and they drop out of it seamlessly into drop 8. And Brady doesn't feel Trey Flowers where he drops. And it's just impressive stuff for Lou Anarumo, continuing to add to an impressive season and an impressive resume.
Yeah, I want to dive into a little bit more on Lou Anarumo. I'll share some thoughts on him, and then we'll get to some of those stats that you mentioned. Jake, the stat master. We'll do that next right here on Locked On Bengals.
Today's episode, like we mentioned, brought to you by Ultimate Football GM, a new partner that we're excited to tell you about. It's a mobile game that lets you take managing a football franchise into your own hands. You can manage every strategic aspect for your team. I've played around with it. You get to go through the draft. You get to develop your facilities. You get to decide how you want to invest in developing your staff, whether it's your scouting department or your coaches, or just finding ways to finagle the trade machine to put your team in the best position. It's a challenging and realistic game where you got multiple difficulties to play with, and it's completely free, playable offline, play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Bengals listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise using promo code Locked On in the game store. That's promo code Locked On in all caps. It won't work in lowercase, so make sure you check it out today. To download the game, you can visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. That's ultimate-gm.com, or just get it on your phone like I did. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Today's show also brought to you by Turo. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, and it's Turo, but it is pronounced Taro, you can book any car you want, wherever you want, from a community of local hosts. Whether you're in Canada like Jake, I met some Canadian Bengals fans over the weekend. Shout out to them. Or maybe you're cruising from Tampa Bay all the way up to Cincinnati or anywhere for the holidays. Well, Taro's got you covered. Economy cars, A to B cars, electric vehicles that you're trying to try. Maybe you want one of these super awesome, classy, fast sports cars. Well, Taro's got it all for you. So don't delay. Use Taro, and most Taro hosts deliver right to you. So forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Taro. That's Turo.com.
Stats? Is stats next?
No, heck no. Screw your stats.
All right.
Not yet. What? No, not yet. Not yet. Here's the thing. And people hate when I say that, but I'm going to say it anyways. The carrot keeps moving. The carrot keeps moving for this Bengals team. And that's exactly what all of the great teams have had and have used as motivation. And the Bengals didn't finish the job last year, and I get all of that, and I know how the season ended. But for Lou Anarumo, this is a new challenge now. It's not, we just got to prepare for the Patriots. Well, now you have to find a way to play really good defense without another piece. And that's the interesting thing about it for me, because he's done it with Hendrickson. He's done it with Cheeto. He's done it without those guys at times. He's done it without Hubbard at times. Now, what about all of them? And and who knows? Does Mike Hilton come back? It feels like he's going to. Cam Taylor-Britt told Kelsey that he's going to. We'll see. All right, yeah. We'll see with Cam. It's a short week. We'll see. But that's the thing I'm interested in now. Look, I know Lou's great. We don't gotta. Now it's how great. And how deep is this defense? Can they use Allen George a lot against the Patriots and feel comfortable with that? Can they use Joseph Osai on the edge and Jeff Gunter and get pressure the way they're hoping to with Cam Sample too, of course? I don't know. Will he just have to get more creative? Can he form this mad scientist Lou defense, that next step? And so, the ultimate carrot is getting that 1 seed, and so the Bengals are still chasing that. But 2, I wouldn't want to have to be making these game plans if I'm Lou Anarumo, because it's a nightmare. But he's really good at it. And I think he's got a pretty good shot at dialing something up at least this week to get you to that Bills game. That's the key. Yeah, that Bills showdown, it was circled back when the schedule came out. Mm-hmm. We know all about it. But you got to get there first. And that means beating New England on the road, Christmas Eve, Bill Belichick. I know they didn't look great at the end of that Raiders game, but it's still the Patriots. It's still on the road. It's going to be a tough one.
Playing in Foxborough, never easy. And New England does have a very good defense. They have a pretty good running game. In general, their offense, not so good. But one of the better defenses in the NFL. We'll get into that a little bit more. One of the answers, without Trey Hendrickson, without Sam Hubbard, was putting B.J. Hill on the edge in base packages. We'll see if that continues. I assume that it will. I think
B.J. Hill is a fairly tough defensive end.
Oh no!
It's a joke,
I know.
Obviously, but
Somebody's going to clip that. You're going to get in trouble.
Whatever. I'll give him a big hug in the locker room. It's all right.
BJ Hill's been playing really well lately.
He has been.
By the way,
he got off to a slow start, and then whatever, maybe Reader coming back. I don't know. He's been playing better.
It actually, yeah. Reader's return definitely helped. Definitely helped. I mean, it helps everybody. And that's a big reason that you can build the defense kind of around inside out, which maybe isn't the way you always want to do it in a modern passing NFL. But for this week anyway, having DJ Reader, BJ Hill, Jermaine Pratt playing at a career level, having a career year, prompting some out there, including tomorrow's film guest, Mike Santagata, to say that he is the best linebacker on the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll have Mike defend that take tomorrow or talk about that take. But Logan Wilson also playing well this season. Von Bell continues to be reliable. I think Jesse Bates had another good game in general. And get Mike Hilton back next week if he's ready to go. That's a big piece in run defense too. Like that does matter. Obviously losing Sam Hubbard, one of the best run defending defensive ends in the league, is going to hurt you. But time and time again, I feel like we've seen Lou come up with answers, shorthanded, on the fly. And it's just such a well-coached unit. They're so adaptable that it feels like, it might not be perfect, but they'll find a way to get by.
And the thing that stands out to me and just listening, I went back and obviously Monday was a travel day for me. So went back and listened to all of the locker room interviews, read through the transcripts, had some downtime, had a layover. And the thing that stood out of all the defensive players that when they were talking was how tight they are.
Yeah.
And when you're tight like that and you meet adversity, you don't panic or point fingers. And that's really important because past Bengals teams, I'm telling you right now, you don't think that 2015 team pointed fingers or 05? The moment chaos ensued, there were fingers. Everybody had 8 hands and fingers were being pointed. And I don't get that vibe from this team at all.
No.
Right? Eli Apple might talk a lot of crap, but he's their brother. And so the future is now, old man. He can drop that line because he's going to do everything else the right way behind closed doors, and they love him for it, right? BJ Hill can talk a little bit, but he's also going to make sure he praised Cam Sample and Joseph Osai and said those guys are starters in this league last week. He said that last week. Mm-hmm. And then they went out and made a difference. And that part of it does matter when you're trying to get, especially a young defense, a defense that might be shorthanded and is going to be shorthanded, to buy into these different adjustments on the fly when everything seems to be going wrong, especially on the road against what many consider the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah. They're confident individually in each other, and having that confidence and trust in each other, that tightness you talked about. And I tweeted this today. Coincidentally, I was just thinking about it. I was just having a lunchtime thought as I was shoveling the snow falling outside in an uncharacteristic snowy winter for me up here. It's trite and it's really hard to quantify and compare to other locker rooms, but the character and the bond in this Bengals locker room is top tier. Mm-hmm. Like some of the best that I've ever seen in my years of following the Bengals, if not the best that I've ever seen in my years of following the Bengals. And I can't compare it to other teams because I don't follow them as closely, but it seems to be special, and it's hard to know how much that really translates to the field, right? And it's hard to do that when you're losing anyway, but hard to imagine that doesn't have some impact. And I know it's soft and mushy, and like I said, you can't put a number on it, but it does feel that way.
Think about all of the things. All right, let's go there. Jermaine Pratt, right? Mike Sand's favorite linebacker on the planet. Fine, not knocking Mike. That's cool. His tweet after the Browns game,
right,
which was clearly about playing time and playing on third down, and people tried to dress it. No. It's about his contract, and it was about that. Of course it was. He's in a contract year. He wants to play on third downs because he wants to get paid. I get it. That would become a thing in a lot of locker rooms. Mm-hmm. Jesse Bates, all of the stuff there, that would become a thing. It wasn't. It was a thing for us. It was a thing for a lot of people. Nobody in that locker room questioned anything, and they just stayed tight. That's tough to do. And this Bengals team has done it. This defense has done it. And so that's the one thing I can guarantee you, Jake, is that they're going to be tight regardless of who's out there and how long 94 is out and how long 91 is out. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later that both of those guys are back. Up next, let's get to your stats, Jake. Let's get to those stats because we didn't get to them yet. And also we got to talk a little bit about that Giovanni Bernard discussion. But today's show brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy. And I hope by now you've listened to Locked On Bengals. You've heard us talk about PrizePicks and you've got in on the action because there's no other fantasy. And you're probably eliminated in a lot of leagues because, well, chaos has ensued in fantasy football this year, but that doesn't impact daily fantasy with PrizePicks. And all you do with PrizePicks is you pick 2 to 5 players, and if they're going to score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, there's no competing against other people. It's you versus the projections, and you can earn up to 10 times your money, boom, by going more or less. It's that simple, and it's a lot of fun. I've done it, and you should too. So download the PrizePicks app. And by the way, it's quick. It takes like 60 seconds to make your entries. And if you want to put more time into it, of course you can do that. But download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com and sign up today to play daily fantasy sports. Use promo code Locked On, and you're going to get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Again, promo code Locked On in the PrizePicks app or prizepicks.com gets you up to $100. If you deposit $100, you'll get a bonus $100. So do it now. PrizePicks.com or the PrizePicks app. Promo code Locked On.
All right, James, some quick stats on the defense. Second half defense, second half team. 17-3 at halftime. The Bengals go on a tear, and it's a blowout by the end of the game. Like, I was done stressing about the game early in the fourth quarter, where halfway through the game, we're thinking about, oh, man, we're going to have to go talk about them blowing a game. And it felt bad. Second half defense. In particular, these splits, I looked, are not very pronounced on the offensive side of the ball. At least not as pronounced. In the second half, the Cincinnati Bengals defense has given up 11 touchdowns. That's second in the NFL to the Denver Broncos. And how many of those touchdowns were garbage time touchdowns? 3 against the Carolina Panthers, 1 last night, 1 against the Steelers, 1 against the Browns, maybe 6 of them. Garbage time touchdowns, and that's going to count for other teams as well. But the Broncos, the only team better at preventing second half touchdowns, has not been in situations this year where they're giving up garbage time touchdowns. Yeah. So stands to reason the Bengals, not statistically, but you can make an argument there that they're the best at preventing second half touchdowns on defense in the NFL. In terms of yards per play, 4.97 yards per play allowed in the second half, which ranks 6th in the NFL this year. They're giving up just 3.8 yards per carry in the run game, which is 4th in the NFL, 6.1 yards per attempt in the passing game, which is 12th in the NFL, a quarterback rating of just 75.8, which is 3rd in the NFL, and just 110 first downs. Again, probably a lot of this is garbage time, probably also for the yards per attempt, 5th in the NFL. Compare that to the first half, where they're 2nd in the NFL in touchdown prevention in the second half. They're 12th in the first half. Where they're 6th in yards per play in the second half. They're 24th in the first half. Where they're 4th best at preventing yards per run in the second half, 19th in the first half. 12th on yards per attempt in the second half, 20th in the first half. QB rating goes from 75.8 in the second half to 87.7, which is 13th best in the NFL in the first half. And they're giving up first downs 21st in the NFL with 129 in the first half versus 110 in the second half, where they're 5th best. So the stark difference, and you would love it if they got off to these fast starts and they were just dominant for an entire game. That's hard to do, right? But the difference coming out of the locker room for this defense is just incredible. That is Jekyll and Hyde stuff. That's night and day stuff, man. That's tale of two cities, to go back to yesterday. Whatever you want to say about it, that's remarkable, those splits.
And you just hope they can keep it up, because if you do that with Joe Burrow, who seems to figure things out as things go as well, and it's sort of the same way, you can handle anybody, and you can be in line with anyone, which I think a lot of our listeners would say. Have anything else on the defense before I talk about our good buddy Giovanni Bernard?
The last one is just a quick note on the advanced stats on the defense in terms of EPA per play in the second half. While it's not garbage time, meaning the game is in the balance, our friend John Shearing sent me this one in a reply to the tweet. They're third best in EPA per play. So if none of those traditional stats do it for you, third best in EPA per play allowed in the second half when it's not garbage time. So really good stuff from Lou Anarumo. The ability to adapt on the fly after all the Marvin years, especially, has to be very, very welcome for Bengals fans, right? And so you're right. You hope that they can keep it up, and it helps them to close out games. It also helps when your offense is really good at closing down games and get a lead to the fourth quarter with this team. So far, you should rightly be very confident that they will finish the game. That's all I got.
This coaching staff has certainly just grown and grown and grown.
Mm-hmm.
Gotten better and better. And Lou Anarumo's as good of an example of that as anybody. Obviously, Zach Taylor would
not even their first choice, as was pointed out. Not even their first choice at defensive coordinator.
First, he was like 8th. I'm not even kidding. Like it wasn't even second or third or fifth. Like I'm serious. It was like, are they ever going to hire a defensive coordinator? Like that was a thing. I wasn't here then, but I followed it, of course. Why wouldn't I? And that was the talk.
And this is the guy that was the scapegoat after Joe Burrow's rookie year. Well, if they're going to move on from a coordinator, it's probably going to be Lou. We were having those discussions, and then boom.
Came together.
Turnaround.
Came together.
Big growth.
No doubt about it. Hey, 6-25-1 in the first 2 years. They've won 6 straight. So what a role reversal. One of the guys that was in town for the 6-25-1 was Giovanni Bernard. And obviously Gio, 37th overall pick, I believe, in the 2013 NFL draft. Played for the Bengals for a long time. Was a great player for a long time. There's this video going viral with the Tampa media and Gio and wanting him to talk, and everybody's talking about it. And just figured I would talk about it for a second and just give you my approach, because there's a lot of people saying a lot of things, and I get it. First things first. Naturally, they wanted to talk to Giovanni Bernard. No doubt. They should. I would want to talk to Giovanni Bernard. It was a big play in the game. Was it the biggest play like they said in that video? No, it wasn't. One of the 4 Brady turnovers was a bigger play. That led to a field goal. They were still up 17-6. I don't think it was the biggest play, but it was certainly a swinging, a momentum swinger for sure in a big moment. That said, the reason, and Jake, there are times I go in the locker room and I know I put out a lot of content, right? Video, and I do a lot, but there are times I go in the locker room and I don't get anything. I don't have any video because I'm just talking to guys. And why do you talk to guys? Well, one, I want them to know that I'm human and that I'm not some some jerk on a podcast or on a video that just talks trash about them when they're bad and praises them when they're good. Yeah, that's part of the job and that comes with it. And that's part of what we have to do. But I also want them to know that, all right, well, I'm not just being a jerk to be a jerk when I do have to be, and vice versa. And so I try to show that side of me. The other thing is you want to get to know them and build a relationship with them. So when they screw up like really bad, which I don't even know if Gio screwed up, that might have been the Bucks weren't on the same page and have communication error. I don't know. Maybe he did. He said he did. So let's just say it. When they screw up and you want to talk to them for that 1 minute to get the quote, and it sucks for everybody because you don't want to see the guys you cover completely do that. And again, I don't think it was as big of a moment in the game as was said in that video. But you want them to be like, all right, I got you. Let's do it real quick. Let's knock it out. All right, Joe, I'll see you Tuesday, or I'll see you Wednesday, or I'll see you tomorrow, whatever it is. That's what you want. Do I have that with everybody in the Bengals locker room? No. But I like to think I'd have it with a decent amount of the guys. And you certainly then don't want to have to argue to get the guy to talk. And so 1, expecting him to talk, I get it. 2, man, Gio's a veteran. He's easy to talk to. And building that relationship, so when that does happen, when there is a fumble, when there is something that goes wrong, you could be like, hey, man, what happened? And so that's my approach, because no one wants to talk about that. That sucks. That sucks for everybody. Hey, Jake, how was it blowing that cold open that you did, and we had to re-record it 4 times. And the one time, James, would you think about putting that up on YouTube for everyone to see with audio issue or whatever the case is, right? If we fail at something and then we have to answer questions about it, it'd be annoying too. So that's my approach. I get that some of the reporters are getting scorched on social media, and I'm not necessarily going to dive into that, but my approach would be, if you have that relationship, then you don't have to push like that, which if you have to push like that anyways, you're not going to get anything worth using. So don't. But if you have a relationship, you don't have to. You don't have to go to that wavelength. You don't have to go there ever with anybody, because they're going to be like, all right, I know you have a job to do. And so I'll talk about it. That's usually how I would, not usually, that's how I approach it. And if they don't talk, they don't talk. I'll write it about it. I'll talk about it anyway.
I'm not sure how many people are going to hear this part of the episode at this point, how deep we are into it. I appreciate your perspective there. I think you're very reasonable in that approach. I don't disagree with anything you said. I just wanted to add on to that. There's often times when fans are frustrated that like the questions are softballs. Why didn't you ask the hard questions?
Yeah.
And this was what happens when you ask questions that people don't want to answer. You're not going to get answers. You're not. And so a lot of times when I see those complaints, I get it. I get that frustration. I was there as a fan, especially when I was younger, especially before I started doing this podcast, right? But there's a way to ask questions. There's a way to talk to people. You got to remember that these people are human, that they don't owe you anything, that they don't have to answer your questions. They might have to appear, but they can say whatever they want to, right? Marshawn Lynch, I'm just here so I don't get fined. There's a way to ask questions. There's a way to build these relationships. There's a way to go about it. And it just comes to mind when you talk about building these relationships, not getting the answer you want, that, that's it. That's it. Off the
reason. No, and the reason I mentioned that part is because it's like, oh, well, he was hurt. Well, all right, that's fine. And I get it. And I haven't talked to every injured Bengal. I haven't talked to Brandon Wilson this year. It's actually irked me that I haven't. He's been around. He's still around on injured reserve. He's not going to play this year. It's irked me that I have not talked to him yet. So on the to-do list, spoiler. But if you had built that by talking to the injured guys, going through rehab, and sometimes if you're injured, you're not even there during media time. So who knows? But that's why you build the relationship. So if you haven't talked to them in a while, they're still willing to talk or want to talk, or maybe not. And maybe he would have had more perspective and talked on Monday versus Sunday. So you don't force it.
Yeah.
Because Shane Graham, historically, there was the time after the 2009 playoff loss, he did not talk. He bolted. Well, that sucks. He should have talked, right? Randy Bullock, give him all the credit in the world. He's talked after, the calf gate and all those things. That's tough to do. But no one wants to ask you, just grill you. They want to get the right answers. But especially when you have a video like that, it makes reporters look bad. And I think there's a happy medium and a work balance along with personal balance that you can do to try to build those relationships. So when crap hits the fan, you can still get legitimate answers about serious things, because everyone has a job to do. And even though it might be uncomfortable at times. So I don't know, maybe that helped, maybe that didn't, but I figured we should end on that for our listeners, because I'm sure a lot of them saw the Gio video and reacted to it on social. And so this way they at least get our thoughts.
I think we can all agree that it could have been done differently. Anyway, we'll wrap up there. Tomorrow we're going to get into the film. We're going to have Mike at Bengals_Sans Santaga and I going through the film takeaways. What changed in the second half? We'll get into the defense, I'm sure, a bit more. We'll talk about Joe Burrow's up and down day as well, as we do on our film takeaway episodes. So until then, Bengals fans, thanks for listening to the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.